The Exorcism of Emily Rose, The Diary of an Exorcist, Requiem, all these films are based on a true story. In 1976, after almost 70 exorcisms, 23-year-old Anna-Elisabeth Michel, better known as Anneliese, died. Today we will tell you who this girl was and why her parents, instead of treating her diagnosed epilepsy, chose to call in priests. Anneliese's father, Josef Michel, grew up in a very religious family. 3 of his aunts were nuns, and his mother hoped that the boy would continue the tradition and become a priest. Her son only partially lived up to her expectations. After returning from the front, Joseph became a carpenter, but at the same time he went to apprentice with a priest. Anneliese's mother, Anna, was also a deeply religious person. Out of wedlock, she gave birth to a daughter, Martha, and she reproached herself for this act all her life. Martha's death at the age of 8 from a serious illness only convinced Anna that she had sinned and was now paying for it. At her wedding with Joseph, the woman covered her face with a black veil out of shame. She never forgave herself for having an illegitimate child. Anneliese was born in 1952. She was the first daughter of the Michel couple. Then the couple had 3 more daughters, Gertrud, Barbara and Roswitha. Anneliese was raised in strictness. From early childhood, her life consisted of religious rituals. Twice a week, the girl attended Mass, sang in the church choir, and read rosaries, prayers with beads. In the middle of winter, Anneliese slept on the bare floor, and on the 13th of each month she observed asceticism in honor of the day of the Virgin Mary of Fatima. The girl's idol was a woman living next door, who spent 5 hours every day getting to church. However, it cannot be said that the girl's childhood was gloomy. She was sincerely immersed in faith, and observing religious requirements did not oppress her. Anneliese had excellent relations with her sisters and parents. She enjoyed spending time with them. The girl took piano and accordion lessons, loved going to school, and was going to become an elementary school teacher. The only thing that darkened her life and worried her parents was her poor health. The first strange attack happened when Anneliese was 16 years old. She felt ill at school. Classmates and teachers later said that the girl fell into a state similar to a trance. She was sent home, where she immediately went to bed. At night, an attack of convulsions began, during which Anneliese bit her tongue hard. The wound was deep, and there was so much blood that her parents were seriously scared. It soon became clear they were worried for good reason. The attacks were repeated. The girl began to develop a speech disorder. Later, sleep paralysis was added to it. Anneliese no longer went to school. She was too ill and weak to study. Her parents took their daughter to doctors, but they shrugged their shoulders. They found no abnormalities in the girl. In 1969, Anneliese woke up with the feeling that there was a huge stone on her chest, preventing her from breathing or calling for help. In the morning, she told her mother and father about this, and the girl was hospitalized. An electroencephalogram did not reveal any changes in Anneliese's brain, but doctors nevertheless diagnosed her with temporal epilepsy. After a short treatment, Michel was discharged, giving her parents a list of medications that they were to take at home. However, in February 1970, Anneliese again ended up in a hospital bed, this time with tuberculosis. It was in the clinic that she experienced her third, most severe attack, which marked the beginning of the story of her obsession. For the first time, she said that she was seeing the face of the devil. Treatment in a psychiatric hospital, where Anneliese was then taken, did not help. To the doctor's great surprise, anticonvulsants did not stop the attacks. The prescribed neuroleptics did not work either. Anneliese continued to sink into depression. Sometimes the girl felt better, and then she returned to her normal life. She studied, met with friends, went to church. But with each new exacerbation of the disease, Anneliese became more convinced that the problem was not epilepsy, but possession. A pilgrimage to San Giorgio Piacentino added fuel to the fire. There, Michel was unable to touch the crucifix or drink holy water. The girl's family turned to several priests with a request for an exorcism, but they advised her to continue following the doctor's recommendations. Anneliese's condition worsened. She hallucinated during prayers, heard voices saying, "You are damned and will rot in hell." The girl tore her clothes, ate spiders and coal, licked her own urine off the floor, and once even bit off the head of a dead bird. During her attacks, she spoke in different languages and called herself Lucifer, Cain, Judas, Nero, and even Adolf Hitler. Her parents continued to beg priests for an exorcism, but were repeatedly refused. Anneliese's condition reached its peak in 1975. Her mother caught her destroying crosses. The attack on religious symbols became irrefutable proof to the Catholic community that Anneliese was possessed by demons. Finally, Michel's family got what they wanted. The church gave permission for an exorcism. The priest who conducted the first session on September 24, 1975, was Ernst Alt, who believed that Anneliese did not look like an epileptic and was actually possessed. During the exorcism, 3 men were needed to restrain the girl. Despite the fact that she barely ate, Anneliese demonstrated monstrous strength during the ritual. After the first exorcism, the girl completely refused to take medication. In total, about 70 rituals were performed on Michel, which took place one after another every week. Each lasted up to 4 hours. 42 exorcisms were recorded on camera. The video shows that the girl has no control over herself, is very aggressive, and can only be kept on the bed with chains. After the rituals, Anneliese could barely walk and, according to the sisters, looked like a rag doll. By the summer of 1976, the girl was no longer recognizable. She had lost weight to 31 kilograms. On the evening of June 30th, Anneliese developed a fever. Before going to bed, she asked Anna to stay with her, repeating, "Mother, I'm afraid." These were her last words. In the morning, Michel was found dead in bed. Ernst Alt, having learned of this, said, "Having cleansed herself of the satanic power, Anneliese's soul rushed to the throne of the Almighty." The circumstances of Michel's death were so unusual that the investigation looked into them for 2 years before submitting the materials to the court. When prosecutor Karl Stenger was informed about the exorcism case, he initially thought it was a prank by his colleagues. The defendants were the girl's parents and 2 priests who performed the rites. They were accused of criminal inaction resulting in death by negligence. An autopsy showed that Michel's death was not directly related to the exorcism. However, the girl's condition was terrible: pneumonia, bruises and wounds all over her body, joints and tendons in her legs mutilated by constant kneeling, exhaustion. A week before her death, Anneliese refused food and water. The girl resigned herself to the fact that she would not survive, and hoped that her death would atone for the sins of the younger generation and make people believe in God. Doctors in court said that Michel was not possessed, and that the girl's mental illness was aggravated by epilepsy and religious hysteria. Ernst Alt said he had not known about Anneliese's condition, otherwise he would have immediately sought help. How the priest had not noticed for almost a year that Michel was turning into a skeleton covered in skin is anyone's guess. All the accused were found guilty. They were given suspended sentences of 6 months in prison with a probationary period of 3 years. Anneliese's parents, apparently, did not abandon the idea of their daughter being possessed. After the trial, the Michel couple demanded that Anneliese's grave be opened. They explained this by the fact that the girl had been buried in a cheap coffin in a hurry. However, it later emerged that a Carmelite nun from southern Bavaria had told Anna and Joseph that she had a vision of Anneliese's incorruptible remains. Official reports, however, did not confirm the nun's words. The body was decomposing like any other. Anneliese's death shocked the Germans. People were discouraged by the fact that such a tragedy could happen in a modern European country. For a long time, the issue of the limits of religious freedom has been actively discussed in Germany. Should believers suffering from mental illnesses be allowed to refuse treatment in favor of exorcism? A group of German theologians appealed to the Vatican with a request to remove from the regulations of the rite the words where the exorcist addresses the devil directly. According to the petitioners, such speeches can have a negative impact on a mentally ill person. He will finally believe that he is possessed. The proposal was accepted 15 years later, but the most radical formulations in the text still remained. 3 films were made based on the story of Anneliese Michel: The Exorcism of Emily Rose, The Diary of an Exorcist, and Requiem. They were sharply criticized by Brian Dunning, an American writer and producer specializing in science and skepticism. In his opinion, people with psychiatric problems do not deserve to be glorified as a kind of pop culture horror story. Anneliese Michel is still revered by a small group of Catholics as an unofficial saint, and her grave is a site of pilgrimage. Exorcisms are still being performed. Rev. Vincent Lampert of Indianapolis says he received 1,700 requests for them in 2018. Anneliese Michel's story will likely not be the last. The modern world remains a place where such cases can happen again.